The filmmaking industry can be one that is very frustrating to follow as a film man, with a lot of great films being released every year, but a lot of questionable decisions being made that lead to bad films flooding the market as well. Unfortunately, a lot of people making the decisions for what films get made aren't necessarily making these decisions to create great art, but they're trying to make money and win awards and get critical acclaim, and that is why we get so many biopics released every year. A biopic, which stands for biographical picture, is a fictional retelling of a real person's life or the events in their life. Some examples of this are The Greatest Showman, Bohemian Rhapsody, Oppenheimer, Walk the Line, Rocketman, and Napoleon. You're probably asking yourself, why should Hollywood stop making biopics? Some of those films are good, I even like some of those films, and why should Hollywood not do that anymore? Well, I'm Josh from Just MASH. Let's figure it out. So let's start with dissecting what a biopic is versus what it claims to be. We've already established that a biopic is a dramatized retelling of a real person's life, but to me, that is where the problem lies. You're being sold a product that is going to try and portray what a human being's life was within 3 hours, and that's pretty unfair to me, along with the fact that ultimately the impression you're going to be left with of an actual human being is going to be curated by the filmmakers. Every filmmaker, when they make any film, has an agenda. That is not necessarily a negative thing, sometimes it's a positive thing or a negative thing, but ultimately everyone has an agenda, and when you're dealing with a real human being's life, you have to consider what is the agenda, why am I being shown what I'm being shown. Now, whether that is with political biopics like Reagan, which was recently released, or Milk, it could also be with musical biopics like Walk the Line or Bohemian Rhapsody or the new Bob Dylan biopic, A Complete Unknown. It could be with historical biopics like Napoleon or The Imitation Game or Suffragette or Oppenheimer. Because of that, a lot of people that have biopics made about them sometimes could be problematic or pretty messy people, and unfortunately, those aspects of the human being's life are not shown in these films. Because the filmmakers want to paint a specific type of narrative or make you like or dislike a certain character, we are not shown the entire truth of these characters. A great example of that is recently P.T. Barnum in The Greatest Showman. The film paints Barnum as this visionary, this great showman, this leader and innovator of show business, but what it does not show is the rampant racism that Barnum spewed out regularly and the wild and famous abuse that he constantly led towards his animals. Instead, we get Hugh Jackman as this whimsical, fun, enigmatic character that we should all love and strive to be towards, but really he was kind of a nasty dude. You also have biopics that are supposed to be this sweet, heartwarming story that really makes you care about humanity. But ultimately that doesn't work, especially when the people are still alive, because human beings can be bad and make mistakes. Sometimes they tell lies. An example of this would be the family from The Blind Side. The film paints them as this loving family who took in this troubled kid, Michael Oher, who eventually became an NFL superstar. In reality, as we learned last year, Michael Oher actually has sued the family for taking him in, not actually adopting him, tricking him into signing a conservatorship, and stealing millions of dollars from it. Allegedly. We also have biopics that take important events or aspects of a person's life and either rearranges them or outright erases them completely to fit the narrative that they want to tell. An example of this would be 2018's Bohemian Rhapsody. Bohemian Rhapsody takes Freddie Mercury, the lead singer of Queen, and actually changes at which point in his life he was infected with the HIV virus and rearranges it in the film to give other moments in the film dramatic weight. To me, that is a completely disgusting practice. People's lives are not something that you get to play with like that and just juggle events around to make other things mean more at different points in a film. These are just a few examples of the errors in the ways that biopics are constructed, but I think another thing to pick apart is the moral and ethical part of making a biopic. I don't care who you are in history, whether you're famous for music, acting in Hollywood, sports, whatever it is. I don't think that your life is just immediately made to be played with just because you were famous. When I watch a biopic, pretty much every second of the film, I always find myself thinking, did this happen? Did they think this? Did they say this? Did they feel this? Most of the time we're left with, who knows? But a lot of times it is verifiably, no. This is not what they thought, this is not what they said, this is not what they acted, this is just not how it went. I think that if I happen to do something notable enough in my life to get a biopic made about me, I would be sort of resentful of the fact that some filmmaker decades later got to decide what the final say was on my thoughts, feelings, emotions, and actions. Especially when you consider that they are taking these people's lives, changing things for dramatic effect, ultimately to make money. On top of all that, I think that biopics are just a cheap way to tell stories. When you're making a biopic, you don't have to do near as much effort in terms of narrative structure or emotional structure because the audience already carries a certain certain relationship with that human being when they come into the film. If you're making a movie from scratch that's completely fiction, that does not include real life people in it, you have to do a lot of legwork to make the audience actually care about the events of the film and the people within them. When you just pick a beloved person like Michael Jackson or Johnny Cash or Freddie Mercury, the audience is going to bring their own connections and attachments to that human being to the film with them. Essentially, you've used a cheat code, you get to start 50 points ahead of 0, close to 100, and kind of play with the audience's emotions in that regard, and I think that's just an unfair way to do things. With that being said, not all biopics are bad. There are some really good ones, like Goodfellas, Schindler's List, The Social Network, The Wolf of Wall Street, Raging Bull, Oppenheimer. But even those films that I've just listed are films that take bad people and have to sort of sensationalize them or make them attractive in some sorts of ways to make the audience care about them as protagonists. So then you have to consider the ethical and moral weight of that aspect, of making people idolize people like Mark Zuckerberg or Jordan Belfort. Now, I think biopics can work under the right circumstances. I don't think it is a net negative every single time. I think the main way that a biopic can work is if you were taking a person and not necessarily telling their life story, but more so using them and their life to make a point. If there is a greater message or a philosophical discussion to be had while using a real-life person as sort of the center of this piece, then that makes sense to me. The way that Christopher Nolan used Oppenheimer in the film Oppenheimer sort of touches on that more than anything. It was more about what his actions did to the universe as a whole and how it changed what humanity is going forward, and it really tried to grapple with a lot of philosophical discussions, but did so through Oppenheimer and his actions. Fincher does a similar thing to a lesser degree in The Social Network with Mark Zuckerberg. Obviously, that film is a lot more about him and his interactions with other people, but ultimately it's about how those interactions have changed us as a society with social networks. I also think a biopic like Rocketman, which was about Elton John, is another way to do it that works, where they are pretty upfront and forward with the fact that this is not a truthful telling of the events of Elton John's life, but this is more of a fun kind of exploration of what his character means to the world. We're shown that he's not a reliable narrator from the beginning, and a lot of the scenes that were shown with the music are a lot more fantastical than, say, something like Bohemian Rhapsody, where it's just, oh, this is how we wrote We Will Rock. Personally, just as a fan of movies, as a filmmaking fan, I don't like to see a celebrity doing a bad impression in an ugly wig on stage trying to make it seem like they're a certain person that they aren't. It's a different type of acting, but ultimately I think it's a lesser type of acting. I would much rather see you craft a character from the ground up and not sort of have to work off of these guide points or references. Also, when you just consider that most of them are sensationalist and are not really truthful retellings of what you're watching, but they're trying to trick you into thinking they are, to me it just feels like a waste of time. There's maybe been a few times that I've really been moved by a biopic, but I think when those things happen, it's ultimately the filmmaking behind it and not so much the story of the biopic. Having said all of that, I say this all the time, I'm not an authority on movies or taste or any of that sort of thing. If you were sitting at home watching this thinking, I actually kind of dig biopics, that's great. Not telling you not to be a fan of them, not telling you not to watch them. This is just why I think Hollywood should stop making them. Of course, they make way too much money and people eat those things up, so probably will never happen, but if they were to not happen, this would be why. Either way, if you think I'm completely wrong and out of touch, let me know in the comments below. If you agree, also let me know in the comments below. Please subscribe to the channel if you like the movie talk. If you think we do some good stuff here, it would really help us out. And I've been Josh from Just Mash. Until next time.